The city lights sparkled against the glass windows of the Royal Leaf, one of the most expensive restaurants in town. Inside, everything looked perfect. Silver plates shined under the golden lights, and waiters moved like dancers, carrying trays of fine dishes. The air was filled with the smell of roasted steak, butter, and perfume. Tonight was special, a big company dinner for one of the richest businessmen in the country, Mr. Victor Hale, the billionaire CEO of Hale Industries. Victor was known for his charm, his money, and his confidence. Every magazine called him the man who could buy anything. He walked into the restaurant with his usual smile, surrounded by his friends and business partners. They laughed loudly, talking about profits, new deals, and luxury vacations. To them, the world was something to play with. Every sound of laughter from their table made the staff move faster, hoping nothing would go wrong. Among the waiters was a woman named Sarah, a hard-working single mother who had been working at the Royal Leaf for 3 years. Everyone respected her because she never complained, even when she worked double shifts. Her daughter Mia was waiting for her mother outside. Mia was around 12, smart, polite, and always cheerful. She didn't have fancy clothes or gadgets like other kids, but she had something better: her best friend, a German shepherd named Rex. Rex was not just a pet. He was tall, strong, and calm. His golden brown fur shone under the streetlights as he sat beside Mia, watching people pass by. His eyes were sharp, always alert. Every now and then he would gently nudge Mia's arm as if reminding her, "I'm here. Don't worry." People walking past the restaurant often stopped to look at the big dog, surprised at how disciplined he was. Some even smiled at the sight of the little girl sitting beside him, reading a small storybook. Inside the restaurant, Sarah was moving quickly between tables. Her feet hurt, but she didn't slow down. The manager whispered to her, "Keep your focus, that's the CEO's table. No mistakes tonight." Sarah nodded. She knew what that meant. One wrong move and she could lose her job. She looked out through the glass for a moment, seeing her daughter waiting patiently. That small glimpse gave her strength. She smiled softly and kept working. Outside, Mia heard laughter echoing through the restaurant doors. It was already late, and she could see from the reflection on the glass how the CEO and his friends were having fun. She hugged Rex and whispered, "Mama will be done soon. Then we'll walk home together." Rex wagged his tail once, keeping his eyes fixed on the door. As the dinner continued, Victor and his group started drinking more wine. Their voices got louder, their laughter sharper. Some of them joked about how rich they were, how they could do whatever they wanted. The staff tried to stay polite and quiet. For Sarah, each trip to that table felt heavier than the last. She wished the night would end soon. Finally, the clock hit midnight. The guests began leaving, still laughing and joking. Sarah breathed a sigh of relief. She quickly cleaned up the table, picked up her small bag, and looked toward the entrance where Mia was waiting. But before she could reach the door, Victor and his friends stepped out ahead of her. Mia stood up politely, moving aside so they could pass. Rex, as always, stood beside her, calm but watchful. Victor noticed them. His friends stopped too. One of them smirked and said, "That's a big dog for such a small girl." Victor chuckled and replied, "Maybe she's training it to guard her lunch." They all laughed. Mia didn't say anything. She just held Rex's collar gently, keeping him close. Victor, feeling playful and showing off in front of his friends, walked closer to Rex. "Don't worry, I'm not scared of dogs," he said loudly. Then with a grin, he raised his leg and gave Rex a light kick on the side. It wasn't hard, but it was enough to make a sound. The laughter froze. Rex stood up immediately, his body stiff, his eyes locked on the man. His deep growl filled the air, low and warning. The people nearby stopped talking. Even the security guard at the door took a step forward. Mia gasped and quickly held Rex's collar. "No, Rex, it's okay," she whispered shakily. But Rex didn't move. His gaze stayed firm, protective, ready. Victor's smile faded. He hadn't expected that reaction. His friends took a step back, unsure whether to laugh or stay quiet. For the first time that night, the confident CEO looked uneasy. He said, trying to laugh it off, "It was just a joke, no harm done." But his voice sounded thinner now, less sure. Sarah rushed out from the door, her face pale. She saw her daughter, the dog, and the group of men. She immediately bowed slightly. "I'm so sorry, sir. Please forgive him. He's trained to protect, she said softly, her hands shaking. Victor raised an eyebrow. Trained? He repeated, looking at the dog again. Something about the way Rex stood, still alert, silent, felt unusual. The security guard stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. He recognized something in Rex's posture, something familiar. He looked at the dog's collar tag and froze for a moment. Then he quietly whispered into his radio. Unit 7, confirm. Possible K9 retired tag, code 45. The sound of static buzzed back. Victor noticed the whisper but ignored it. He brushed off his coat, trying to bring back his usual smile. Let's go, gentlemen, he said, walking toward his car. But the guard's expression had changed completely. He stared at the dog with respect, almost like a salute. Rex's tail moved slightly, but his eyes stayed locked on the man who had touched him. As the luxury cars drove away, Sarah hugged Mia tightly. Are you okay? She asked. Mia nodded, but her voice trembled. He kicked Rex, Mama. He didn't know. Sarah looked down at the big dog, who was now calm again, resting beside them. No, she whispered softly. He didn't know what kind of dog he just kicked. The night was quiet again, but the moment wasn't over. Something had started, a story that would soon reach everyone, from the quiet streets to the front pages of every news site. The next morning, sunlight touched the tall glass buildings of the city, but inside Victor Hale's office, the billionaire CEO wasn't thinking about sunshine. He was still laughing about the night before, sitting in his chair drinking his usual cup of black coffee. To him, the small incident with the dog was nothing serious, just a silly joke to end a long party. His assistant entered the room with a worried look. Sir, the press wants a few photos from last night's event. People posted some videos, too. Victor smiled lazily. Good, let them talk. A little attention never hurts. He didn't know that one of those videos had already started spreading online, a short clip showing him laughing after lightly kicking the dog outside the restaurant. It was only a few seconds long, but in those seconds people saw more than he expected. Meanwhile, in a small apartment across town, Sarah was helping her daughter get ready for school. Mia's face looked calm, but she hadn't slept well. Mama, why did that man hurt Rex? She asked softly. Sarah paused while tying her daughter's hair. He didn't understand, sweetheart. Some people forget that animals have hearts too. Mia nodded quietly and hugged Rex before leaving for school. The big dog followed her to the door, then sat down, waiting as if standing guard. At the restaurant, workers were already whispering about what had happened. I heard that man was a billionaire, one said. Yeah, and he kicked the girl's dog like it was funny, another added. Sarah tried to ignore the talk and focus on her work. But when the manager walked in holding his phone, she knew it wasn't over. Sarah, he said quietly, you need to see this. The manager showed her the video, grainy, shaky, but clear enough. The CEO's laughter, the dog's reaction, the people watching, it was all there. Oh no, Sarah whispered, covering her mouth. Her heart raced. She hadn't wanted trouble, but the internet had already found it. By noon, hashtags about the billionaire and the dog started trending. People commented things like, who laughs at kicking a dog? And that's not funny, it's cruel. Some recognized the restaurant's logo, others identified Victor Hale almost instantly. Reporters began calling his company for comments, and within hours, news channels were replaying the clip. Back at Hale Industries, Victor's assistant entered again, this time looking pale. Sir, it's everywhere, she said, holding out her phone. Victor frowned. What is? The video, sir. People are angry. Victor grabbed the phone and watched the clip. His face stiffened. This is nothing. I barely touched the dog. He snapped. But deep down, something in his stomach twisted. He hadn't realized how bad it looked, how heartless the laughter sounded when seen through another's eyes. He stood up and paced across the room. Call my PR team. We'll fix this. Tell them to say it was a misunderstanding. His assistant nodded nervously, but outside those office walls, things were moving faster than his team could stop. By evening, TV channels were showing pictures of Mia and her dog. The waitress's daughter and her loyal German shepherd, the headline read. Reporters waited outside the restaurant, hoping to speak to Sarah. When she stepped out after work, she was surprised by the flashing cameras. Ma'am, is it true your dog was kicked by the CEO of Hale Industries? One asked. Was your daughter there? Another shouted. Sarah held up her hands gently. Please, I don't want any trouble. My daughter and the dog are fine. We don't want attention." But even as she spoke, Rex stood beside her, calm but alert, looking straight at the crowd. Someone in the group whispered, "That dog looks trained, like a police canine." That small comment spread fast. Soon, people online began sharing photos of Rex's collar, zooming in on a metal tag engraved with strange numbers. Someone finally found a match. Rex wasn't just a dog. He was a retired police canine, once part of a city task force decorated for bravery. He had saved 2 officers during a robbery years ago. When his handler passed away, the dog had been given to the man's wife and daughter, Sarah and Mia. By the time this truth came out, the story had exploded. "Billionaire kicks retired police dog" became the headline on every site. The comments were endless. Some demanded an apology, others called for an investigation. The story wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, about a line that should never be crossed. That night, Victor sat alone in his mansion watching the news. His phone buzzed nonstop, messages from board members, business partners, and even old friends. Everyone wanted an explanation. His lawyer's voice echoed in his ear. "This is bad, Victor. Very bad. You didn't just kick a dog. You kicked a hero." He turned off the TV and stared at the dark window. For the first time, the city lights didn't look beautiful to him. They looked cold and distant. He poured himself another drink, but it didn't calm his nerves. His laughter from last night now echoed in his head like a mistake he couldn't erase. Across town, Mia sat on her bed, holding Rex's neck tightly. "He's not a bad man, right?" she whispered. The dog rested his head on her lap, his eyes soft, loyal. Sarah sat beside them, brushing Mia's hair gently. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "people forget how their actions can hurt others. But the truth always finds a way." Outside, rain began to fall, washing the streets clean. But for Victor Hale, no amount of rain could wash away what he had done. The world was watching, and the story was only just beginning. Morning arrived, quiet and cool, but it wasn't a peaceful morning for Victor Hale. The Billionaire CEO woke up to dozens of messages on his phone, calls from reporters, emails from the board, and thousands of notifications from social media. The video of him joking with the dog had now spread across the entire internet. News anchors called it the kick that shocked the city. Victor rubbed his eyes and sighed. He tried to brush it off. "People will forget in 2 days," he muttered. He had seen bad press before. Money and time usually fixed everything. But this time, something felt different. Even his own employees were whispering. At the restaurant, Sarah arrived early as always. She hoped things would calm down. But when she walked inside, she noticed reporters waiting outside the glass doors. Some waved microphones. One of them shouted, "Ma'am, is it true your dog was a police hero?" She froze. She didn't want fame. She just wanted a normal life. Mia stayed home from school that day. She sat on the couch beside Rex, holding a small framed picture of her father in a police uniform. The same badge number was engraved on Rex's collar tag. She whispered softly, "Papa trained him, Rex. You remember him, don't you?" The dog lifted his head as if understanding every word. Sarah called her daughter during her lunch break. "Sweetheart, don't talk to anyone today, okay? Just stay inside. Lock the door," she said gently. Mia agreed, but deep down she was worried. She had seen the news too. Everyone was talking about her dog, her mom, and the rich man who had laughed. By afternoon, the story had reached even higher places. The police department released a short statement confirming Rex's service record. Canine Rex served 5 years in the city police force and was retired with honor after his handler, Officer Daniel Brooks, passed away. That single message changed everything. People who had once followed Victor Hale for his luxury life now filled his pages with angry comments. Animal rights groups started protests. Former police officers posted photos of their canine partners, calling Rex a brother in service. The story was no longer a small mistake. It was becoming a movement. In his tall glass office, Victor stared at the news screen. Each word felt heavier than the last. His PR manager stood nearby, speaking carefully. "Sir, we can't ignore this anymore. The video has reached over 10 million views. Sponsors are freezing deals," Victor frowned. 10 million? That's impossible. It's real, sir. Even foreign news channels are showing it. He walked to the window, staring at the city below. Cars moved like ants. For the first time, he didn't feel powerful looking down on them. He felt small. It was just a joke, he whispered. Why can't they see that? The PR manager stayed quiet. Some lessons, she thought, had to come the hard way. That evening, Sarah finished work and stepped out of the restaurant. The crowd outside had grown. Flashlights flashed again and again. Someone shouted, "Sarah, how does it feel to raise a hero dog?" Another said, "Do you want justice?" She tried to smile politely, but her hands were shaking. "Please," she said softly, "we're just ordinary people. We don't want trouble." Just then, a familiar police car pulled up beside the restaurant. Officer Ramos, an old friend of her late husband, stepped out. "Sarah," he said warmly, "I think it's time we talk." She nodded and followed him to the car. Inside, Ramos showed her his phone. On the screen was a message from the police chief. "He wants to see you and your daughter tomorrow morning," Ramos said. "It's about Rex," Sarah frowned. "Is something wrong?" "No," Ramos smiled. "Something right, I think." That night, Mia couldn't sleep. She kept staring at Rex, who was resting near the window. The city lights flickered on his fur. "Do you think that man will say sorry?" she asked softly. The dog didn't move, but his ears twitched at the sound of her voice. She smiled faintly and whispered, "You're the bravest dog in the world, Rex." Across town, Victor sat alone in his study, surrounded by silence. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from the board chairman. "We need to discuss your position tomorrow." He leaned back in his chair, staring at the glowing screen. For years he had believed power could fix anything, money, mistakes, even people. But tonight he realized power could also disappear in a moment. He thought of the little girl's eyes, the way the dog had growled, the silence afterward. It haunted him. At midnight he walked out to his balcony. The city looked peaceful, as if nothing had happened. But deep down he knew a storm was building, one that money couldn't stop. The next morning would bring him face to face with a truth he couldn't buy, hide or control, and for Sarah, Mia, and Rex, it would bring something unexpected too, a chance for justice, and maybe something even more powerful, change. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds, but it didn't bring peace, it brought attention. Outside Sarah's small apartment, 2 police cars were parked, their blue lights flashing softly. Curious neighbors peeked through windows, whispering, wondering what was happening. Inside, Mia sat at the breakfast table, hugging Rex tightly. "Mama, are they angry with us?" she asked in a small voice. Sarah knelt down beside her, brushing her hair gently. "No, sweetheart," she said softly. "They're not angry. They just want to talk about Rex." A gentle knock came on the door. When Sarah opened it, Officer Ramos stood there, smiling warmly, his hat under his arm. Behind him was another officer in uniform, holding a small folder. "Morning, Sarah," Ramos said kindly. "We're here to escort you and your daughter to the station. The chief wants to speak with you personally." Sarah's heart beat fast. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong," Ramos said with a smile. "Just important." They followed him outside. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions. "Is that the same dog from the video? Is it true he's a police canine?" But Ramos raised his hand firmly. "No questions, please. Give them space." When they arrived at the police headquarters, the large front doors opened automatically. Inside, officers greeted them with quiet respect. A few even saluted Rex as he walked past. The German Shepherd moved calmly beside Mia, his tail low but his steps strong. Everyone could see this was not just a pet. He was a soldier in fur. Inside the main office, Police Chief Anderson stood up from his desk. He was a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, shaking Sarah's hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Sarah looked surprised. You know who we are?" The chief nodded. "Yes, your husband, Officer Daniel Brooks, was one of the bravest men on our force. And Rex," he looked down at the dog and smiled, "was his partner. They were legends." Mia's eyes widened. "You knew my dad?" The chief's voice softened. "I did. He and Rex saved 2 officers during a robbery 5 years ago. Your father didn't survive that day, but Rex did. After he recovered, we retired him and made sure he went to the person your husband trusted most, his family." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. She hadn't expected anyone to remember after all these years. "We never told anyone," she whispered. "We just wanted a quiet life." The chief nodded. "And you deserve that. But after what happened, the world deserves to know who Rex really is." He turned his computer monitor toward her. On the screen was the viral video. paused on the moment Victor's shoe touched the dog's side. "This has gone beyond gossip now," he said firmly. "That man didn't just kick an animal. He disrespected a decorated officer." Sarah looked down, her hands trembling. "Please, I don't want trouble. I don't want anyone to suffer. My daughter's already scared." The chief placed a hand on her shoulder. "This isn't about revenge, ma'am. It's about respect." Just then, another officer entered the room with a folder and handed it to the chief. "Sir, the press is asking for an official statement." The chief nodded, took a deep breath and said, "Then let's give them one." A few hours later, the police department released a public announcement. Cameras flashed, microphones clicked, and the chief stood proudly at the podium. Behind him were Sarah, Mia, and Rex, sitting quietly. "Ladies and gentlemen," the chief began, "the dog in the recent viral video is not an ordinary pet. His name is Rex, a retired police K9 who served our city with honor. He worked alongside Officer Daniel Brooks, who gave his life in the line of duty. This dog has saved lives, stood against danger, and earned our respect. He deserves to be treated with the same dignity as any officer who served." The room fell silent. Then, as if the world collectively exhaled, the applause began. Cameras zoomed in on Rex, sitting straight, his ears up, his badge tag shining in the light. Across town, Victor Hale watched the live broadcast on his television. He stood frozen, the remote slipping from his hand. The sound of applause filled the room like thunder in his ears. "Police K9, he whispered to himself. He had no idea. His face turned pale. "What have I done?" Within minutes, reporters surrounded his company building. News headlines flashed across every channel. Billionaire CEO kicked a decorated police K9, now faces public outrage. The company's stock began to fall. Investors called nonstop. Sponsors canceled events. Victor's face, once a symbol of success, had become the face of arrogance. Meanwhile, outside the police station, Mia looked up at her mother with shy eyes. "Mama, does this mean Papa's partner is famous now?" Sarah smiled through tears. "No, sweetheart," she said softly. "It means people finally remember what real heroes look like." Rex turned his head toward the crowd, tail wagging slowly. He didn't understand the cameras, the cheers, or the flashing lights. But he could feel something in the air: pride, love, and justice. That night, as the city lights glowed across the skyline, one man couldn't sleep. Victor sat in darkness, replaying every second of that video, now knowing the truth. He saw not just a dog, but a hero, a piece of someone's family, someone's sacrifice. For the first time in years, the billionaire who thought he had everything felt the weight of something money could never fix: guilt. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah and Mia felt something they hadn't felt in years: peace. By the next sunrise, the story was everywhere. Every news channel, every social feed, every trending list carried the same headline: Billionaire CEO kicks retired police K9, public demands justice. In the morning, TV screens across the city flashed with clips of Rex sitting proudly beside Mia and Sarah at the police press conference. His calm eyes and quiet strength melted hearts across the country. The internet called him Sergeant Rex, the silent hero. People from all walks of life shared the story. Former police officers wrote long messages about their canine partners. Animal lovers posted videos saying, "A hero in fur deserves respect." Within hours, artists began drawing digital paintings of Rex with a medal around his neck, and children started sending letters to the police station addressed to the brave dog. But for Victor Hale, the billionaire CEO, the day felt heavier than any before. His office phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists wanted statements. His investors demanded explanations. One of his partners said coldly on the phone, "Victor, you've embarrassed the company. People don't forget things like this." Victor sat in his leather chair, pale and quiet. His mind replayed the moment from that night: the sound of his shoe touching the dog's side, the sudden growl, the girl's frightened face. It echoed again and again, like a haunting reminder of how small one careless act could become so big. His PR team rushed into the room, holding papers and tablets. "Sir, we need to respond fast," said one of them. "We can't stay silent anymore." Victor rubbed his forehead. "What can I even say? I didn't mean to hurt him." "That doesn't matter anymore," another said carefully. "People saw what they saw. It's not just about you kicking a dog. It's about disrespecting a hero." Victor stared at the window, his reflection staring back at him. For the first time, he saw himself not as a powerful CEO, but as a man who had lost control of his own story. Meanwhile, Sarah's phone wouldn't stop ringing either, but this time the world was on her side. News anchors wanted interviews, charities wanted to donate, and even schools called to honor Rex. When Sarah walked into the restaurant that afternoon, the same place where the whole incident began, the staff greeted her with applause. Her manager smiled and said, "Sarah, you don't have to serve today. You and your daughter made us proud." She smiled shyly. "I didn't do anything. It was Rex who did." "Still," he said kindly, "it started here. Maybe it's time the world knows good stories too." Outside, reporters waited again, but this time their voices were gentle, respectful. "Ma'am," one said, "how does it feel knowing your dog has become a symbol of courage?" Sarah held Mia's hand tightly and replied softly, "We're just grateful people see him for who he really is. A protector, not a pet." Mia smiled proudly and looked at Rex, who stood tall beside her, his tongue out, his eyes calm. Cameras clicked rapidly. Someone in the crowd whispered, "He's beautiful." As the day went on, something surprising happened. Messages began pouring into the police station from people Victor had helped in the past, students, workers, and small business owners. Some defended him, saying, "He's a good man who made a bad mistake." Others said, "Even powerful people can learn." By evening, a new message appeared online. It was from Victor himself. It read, "I made a mistake that hurt more than I ever understood. I thought I was joking, but I disrespected a true hero. To the Brooks family, to the police force, and to every person who's ever loved a dog, I am deeply sorry. I'll spend my time and resources supporting the canine units that protect us. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope to earn back some respect." The message spread fast. Some people accepted it, others doubted it, but everyone agreed. It was the first time Victor Hale had spoken from his heart instead of his wallet. That night, news anchors read his apology live while showing clips of Sarah and Mia sitting quietly at home. Rex lay near the window, his head resting on his paws. The glow from the television reflected softly on his fur. Mia looked at her mother. "Do you think he really means it, Mama?" Sarah sighed and smiled faintly. "Maybe. Sometimes people don't change until life teaches them a hard lesson." Outside their small apartment, a soft wind blew through the streets. The city lights shimmered like tiny stars, and the noise of traffic faded into a gentle hum. The world was finally starting to calm down, but the story wasn't over yet. In another part of the city, Victor sat at his desk, staring at an old photo on his shelf, him with his first dog, a golden retriever he had loved as a child. He hadn't thought about that dog in years. He whispered quietly, "Maybe I forgot what love feels like." He stood up and opened his window. The air felt cold, sharp, and real. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: humility. Across town, a new mural appeared overnight on a brick wall near the police station. It showed Rex standing proudly beside a police badge, with the words painted beneath, "Respect every life, big or small." People stopped to take pictures, some with tears in their eyes. The storm of anger had turned into a wave of awareness. And as the city slept that night, 3 lives, Sarah's, Mia's, and Victor's, were forever changed by one small act. One brave dog and one powerful truth. Sometimes, a single moment can teach the whole world the meaning of respect. Days passed, but the storm around Victor Hale didn't calm. His name, once shining on magazine covers and company walls, had become a symbol of arrogance and carelessness. News anchors discussed him every night. Some said he was finished. Others said they wanted to see if he could make things right. Inside his mansion, Victor sat in his quiet study, the same one where he had built his empire. But this time the room felt empty. The awards, the golden frames, the trophies, none of them brought comfort. He looked at the mirror across the room and barely recognized himself. The confident smile was gone. The eyes that once looked proud were now tired. He opened his laptop and watched the police press conference again. The image of Rex sitting proudly beside Mia played again and again. The chief's words echoed. He worked alongside Officer Daniel Brooks, who gave his life in the line of duty. Rex deserves the same respect as any officer who served. Victor closed his eyes. That sentence hit harder than any news headline. He realized he hadn't just disrespected a dog. He had insulted the memory of a man who gave his life for others. The next morning, he made a decision. He called his assistant and said quietly, "I want to meet them." The girl, her mother, and the dog. His assistant hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" "The public might think it's for attention." Victor looked out the window at the city skyline. "No," he said firmly. "This isn't for cameras. This is for me." That afternoon, a black car pulled up near the small apartment where Sarah and Mia lived. Victor stepped out dressed simply for once. No suit, no tie, just a plain shirt and dark jeans. He carried a small bouquet of white flowers in one hand. When Sarah opened the door, surprise filled her eyes. "Mr. Hale?" she whispered, unsure if she should let him in. He nodded respectfully. "Please, just Victor. I came to apologize, not as a CEO, but as a man who made a terrible mistake." Sarah hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. Inside, the small apartment was cozy and warm. Mia sat on the couch reading, with Rex lying near her feet. When she looked up and saw Victor, her face turned serious. Victor bent down slightly and said softly, "Hello, Mia. Hello, Rex." Rex stood up slowly, watching him closely, but not growling. His intelligent eyes seemed to study every movement, every word. Victor knelt on one knee, setting the flowers down on the floor beside the dog. "I didn't know who you were that night," he said quietly. "And I didn't know who your father was. I thought I was being funny. I wasn't, I was cruel. And I'm sorry." Sarah listened quietly, her eyes filled with both surprise and emotion. Victor's voice shook slightly as he continued. "I've spent years thinking success made me better than others. That night showed me how wrong I was. I forgot respect. I forgot kindness." He looked up at Sarah. "You've raised a brave daughter and cared for a hero. You both deserve better from people like me." There was silence in the room. Only the ticking of the small clock filled the air. Then Mia took a small step forward. "You didn't mean to hurt Rex?" she asked softly. Victor shook his head. "No, I didn't, but I did hurt him, and you. And that's something I'll always remember." Rex moved closer, sniffed Victor's hand, and then, to everyone's surprise, gently licked it once before sitting down. Sarah's eyes softened. Victor smiled faintly, his eyes wet. "Thank you," he whispered. He reached into his pocket and took out an envelope. "I've started a charity foundation," he said, handing it to Sarah. "It's named the Brooks K9 Fund. It will support training, care, and retirement for all police dogs across the country. This is my way to make things right, not to erase what happened, but to honor what your husband and Rex stood for." Sarah held the envelope with trembling hands. "You didn't have to do this," she said softly. Victor smiled sadly. "I had to. Some debts can't be paid with money, but they can be honored with action." Mia walked up to him holding a small drawing she had made earlier that week, a sketch of Rex wearing a medal. She handed it to Victor shyly. "This is for you, so you don't forget him again." Victor looked at the drawing and smiled gently. "I won't," he promised. "I'll remember this for the rest of my life." He stood up and turned toward the door. Before leaving, he looked back one last time. "Thank you for letting me in," he said quietly. "You taught me something that no amount of money ever could. Respect." When the door closed behind him, Sarah stood still for a moment. Then she turned to Mia and said softly, "Sometimes even the richest man can be poor in heart, but it's never too late to change." Rex wagged his tail once, as if agreeing. Outside, Victor stood by his car, holding the drawing tightly in his hand. The city around him looked different, softer, quieter. For the first time, he didn't feel powerful or proud. He just felt human. And that was enough. Weeks passed since that quiet afternoon when Victor Hale visited the small apartment. The city had begun to move on, but the story of Rex, the retired police K9, still lived in people's hearts. It wasn't just a headline anymore. It had become a lesson. Everywhere, people talked about respect, kindness, and change. Schools shared the story with children, teaching them that even one careless act can hurt deeply and one honest apology can heal. The mural of Rex near the police station had become a local landmark. Fresh flowers appeared there every morning, some from strangers, others from officers who remembered the fallen hero, Officer Daniel Brooks. Sarah returned to her work at the restaurant, this time with a quiet pride. Her coworkers treated her with newfound respect. Customers who recognized her often said, "You're the one with the hero dog, right?" She would smile humbly and reply, "Yes, but he's more than that. He's family." Mia, meanwhile, had become something of a local celebrity at school. Her classmates who once didn't notice her now listened to her stories about Rex. Teachers invited her to share her experience at assemblies. She always spoke with the same gentle honesty, saying, "Rex taught me that bravery isn't about fighting, it's about protecting." Rex himself seemed to sense the change. He was older now, his walk slower but his eyes still sharp and filled with purpose. Whenever he passed the mural, he would stop and stare for a moment, as if he understood that it was him, painted strong, noble and proud. One weekend morning, the police department invited Sarah, Mia, and Rex to a ceremony. They didn't know what to expect. When they arrived, they saw the whole force gathered in the courtyard. Banners read, "Honoring our heroes, past and present." Chief Anderson greeted them warmly. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, "we have something special today." He led them to the front where a small platform stood. On it was a bronze statue, a perfect replica of Rex sitting tall beside a police badge. A plaque below read, "K9 Rex, loyal partner, brave defender, eternal hero." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as the crowd applauded. Mia held Rex close, whispering, "That's you, boy. You did it." Cameras flashed, but this time it wasn't chaos, it was celebration. The chief turned to the crowd and said, "Let this be a reminder. True strength is not in power or wealth. It's in loyalty, compassion, and respect." At the back of the crowd, unnoticed by most, stood Victor Hale. He wore no designer suit, no cameras followed him. He came alone, quietly. When the ceremony ended, he waited until the crowd thinned, then walked forward slowly. Sarah noticed him and smiled politely. "Mr. Hale," she said softly. Victor nodded. "I heard about the statue," he said. "I wanted to see it with my own eyes." He knelt in front of the bronze figure, tracing the engraved words with his fingers. "He was more than a hero," he murmured. "He changed lives, and even mine." Sarah nodded. "You've already honored him in your way. The Brooks K9 Fund has started helping so many officers and dogs. I think Daniel would be proud." Victor looked at her gratefully. "I didn't do it to be forgiven," he said quietly. "I did it because I needed to remember what really matters." Mia ran up just then, holding a small medal that one of the officers had given her. "Mr. Hale," she said cheerfully. "Look. They said Rex earned this years ago, but we get to keep it now." Victor smiled warmly. "He earned it a long time ago, little one. You and your mom did too." Rex walked closer, his head brushing gently against Victor's arm. The billionaire froze for a moment, then softly placed his hand on the dog's head. It was a moment of silent forgiveness, the kind that words could never fully express. When Victor stood up, he looked at the statue again. "Thank you," he said softly, not to Sarah or Mia, but to Rex. Then he turned and walked away slowly, disappearing into the crowd. As he left, Mia looked up at her mother. "He's different now," she said. Sarah smiled. "Yes, some people change quietly but deeply." That evening, the city sunset painted the sky in orange and gold. The bronze statue of Rex shone in the fading light. People passing by stopped to take pictures, and some even bowed their heads respectfully. In his mansion, Victor stood by the window holding the drawing Mia had given him, the one of Rex with a medal. He had framed it on his wall right above his desk. For the first time, his office didn't feel like a place of pride, but a place of purpose. The man who once measured his life by money now measured it by meaning. He picked up his phone and called his foundation manager. "Double the fund's support this year," he said firmly. "More dogs, more training, better care." "Of course, sir," came the reply. Victor ended the call and looked at the drawing again. "Thank you, Rex," he whispered, "for teaching me how to be human again." Across the city, Mia and Sarah sat on their balcony, watching Rex sleep peacefully under the soft moonlight. "Do you think Papa is proud of us?" Mia asked. Sarah smiled, tears in her eyes. "I think he's proud of Rex. And of you." A cool wind brushed against their faces. Somewhere in the distance, a police siren echoed faintly, like a salute to the brave. And in that quiet night, the world seemed just a little bit kinder, because one man learned humility. One family found peace, and one dog reminded everyone that heroes don't always wear uniforms. Some simply wag their tails and teach humanity what respect truly means.